My name is Bindu Dafina Kaloko, and I'm the founder and CEO of Theatermatics. And thank you so much for joining us. I just wanted to go over the agenda for today. So we had the entry. I'll do a short welcome and intro. I'll do the first presentation, and then I'll be followed by Sean Batson from You Can Master. And then after him will be Cedric Scott from Melanated Mathematics. So the reason why we're hosting this webinar is because of the existing achievement gap. This is data from 2013. And as you can see where the blue line is, I'll just change this to a pointer so that you can see. That's where the performance levels were for Black students nationally. And then for the line above it was the performance for white students. And that's from 2013, but recently, NWEA released data related to COVID and the performance levels of students. And they stated that the gap is being widened. And also there was a disclaimer of some sort because they said they couldn't even gather data from the most effective, like negatively affected students or population. So their data isn't as accurate. And of course, we know parents are struggling with remote learning while working from home, but some are thriving, and then we have some who are struggling, right? So my presentation is called Parents as Teachers, Methods for Helping Your Child in Math. And if I were to create a profile for who I'm addressing in my presentation, the parent is the one who doesn't really remember some of the math concepts, or maybe the math concepts are confusing to them. Maybe they didn't like math as a child. Maybe now they still don't like math. Or maybe it's a parent who's comfortable with math, but when they explain it to their child just doesn't understand it, and they keep trying to explain it different ways. It's hard for them to figure out what their child doesn't know. And the child would be someone who their skills need strengthening, like their foundation is weak in many regards, or maybe they lost interest in math. It could be some math avoidance, math anxiety, I don't know, is a frequent response. And this presentation is geared for Black families, but of course the information could apply to anyone of any background. But we're specifically targeting the Black community because it's on us basically for dealing with our community and providing the resources that they need. So my first tip is, if you're working with your child, use guided questions. Now, some parents may already know this. I mean, I know there's some educators in here. So guided questions are less focused on facts, more focused on the student's approach. They're like open-ended questions. They reveal the student's understanding, has the student draw a conclusion, or I should say your child. I'm talking as a teacher, but I'll say your child. It guides them in drawing conclusions, making predictions. And I put a source here. Feel free to take screenshots as we present. That source is geared for teachers, but it's very useful for parents as well on asking guided questions. So for example, here's a math problem. A ferry from Sunset Park to Rockaway can carry 48 people at a time. How many ferries are needed to carry 200 people from Sunset Park to Rockaway? So there's a lot of connections that need to be made as far as like, maybe they would use division, grouping the 48 students, the 48 people together, and then maybe they would subtract. They would do multiple subtraction. I don't know. But guiding questions would be, what information is useful in this problem? That's an example. A leading question, and I know it's hard, especially if it's like frustration, a leading question would be like a rhetorical question. And also guiding questions, they have a neutral tone to them. Like if you ask a leading question or rhetorical question, something like this, do we really need to use that number to find the answer? Like your child is looking for cues. If you have an inflection or it's a rhetorical question, then they know it's wrong. It's not really helping them in get into the understanding. So another open-ended question, why did you decide to do that first? Versus a closed-ended question, more of, is adding going to help or should you divide? Like that's kind of hinting that dividing is right. So it takes a lot of work to figure out guiding questions in that regard, but sometimes you could write it out in advance if you know the work that the student is going to do, or just be mindful. It's just about mindfulness while helping your child. Like, how am I asking questions? Am I guiding them in their own independent thinking, or am I basically telling them the answer? Is the point that I'm making with this suggestion here. All right, so tip 2, it may seem simple, but the way things are going now, my second tip is stop, go back, move forward. The way things are going now, a lot of students, they're still going forward in the virtual learning. Like I have some clients where the teacher gives them, like, it's like a virtual curriculum. So they may not understand something. So that's when you as a parent have to step in. For example, this problem, I had a client the other day who had a problem like this. This requires a lot of skills. So in the chat, would you type some of the skills that you think you need in order to solve a problem like this? Right, decomposing shapes, area or perimeter. Right, I didn't give you instructions. Yeah, so area or perimeter, but this was an area problem. So they needed to find an area of this room. Right. So what I did is I made like a list of what some of the skills you need. So you need to know what area is, or some students don't know what area is. They just know I need to multiply. They don't even understand the concept of area, right? They just do the steps. You need to know the correct formula. Like, is it pi r squared? Is it length times width? Multiplication tables. Some students are still struggling with multiplication tables. So you get the idea. This is a lot of skills. It may seem like it's just one thing, but for a child who needs to know what to do, conclude what to do, some kids are thriving. They have the foundation, they can do it, but others it's just, where do I start, right? So I would say break it down. This is the going back. Figure out what skill your child doesn't know. Give them a worksheet on that skill. Let's say if they're still struggling with multiplying 2 digits by 2 digits or 2 digits by 1 digit, like as you're helping them, don't go forward. Just have them practice that skill that's necessary for the more complex problem, then move forward, like build upon it. So here's another list. Again, you could take screenshots because I'm not going to read everything. But for this, I would say review addition and subtraction or multiplication as needed first. And even something like this, I would give a worksheet and just have, like some of you said, decomposing, right? So it's like splitting your figures. I would just tell my child to just split the figures first, because for some children, it's hard for them to even see that. So whatever it is, do it one at a time. So have them split all the figures, then get to the multiplying, and then get to area. And then for this one, if you notice, the missing sides for all of them are always a sum of the other two sides. So I didn't even get to ones that had subtraction. So again, it's like really breaking it down one step at a time with the skills. And this is for the child who's really, really struggling. Don't keep moving in that virtual learning, just break it down. And you can Google online, like using specific wording for finding the skills, like worksheets for that. Another example, this is a different form of guided questions, is to make a list for the students to use. So for example, like a child who may not know where to start with this type of problem, if you know what to do, you can list the questions for them and provide it on a sheet of paper. Where do I draw my dotted lines? That's like the first step. Like if you tell them to draw a straight line, fine, but that's the compartmentalizing or splitting up the compound images. So I would do that first. List that question first. What sides are missing on this figure? Okay, then they have to look, okay, it's this one. Then maybe even you could include a step like label it. But the point is, whatever, if you do the work on your own and you know the questions that you're answering or the steps that you're using, I would provide my child with a list of questions to guide them in whatever the task is. So this is Justice Sotomayor.
4 years in grammar school, I was at best an average student. And that was because I learned Spanish before I learned English at home. I was delayed in fully understanding what teachers were teaching me. One of the first things I did, I went to the smartest girl in the class, Donna Ranella. She's still a friend, by the way. And I went up to Donna and I said, "You get good grades. How do you study?" Donna explained it to me, and after that, I began working at the lessons she gave me, and I became a good student. So I think the greatest secret to the success of my life is not being ashamed of asking for help.
Right, so I included that clip because I just love that she was independent and asking for help. But I would say for parents, something you can do is have study groups or peer tutoring if you're not doing it already. Like in one class, maybe there's 2 or 3 whiz kids. You can contact those parents and say, hey, let's do a small group tutoring session. Like sometimes kids with peer tutoring is so powerful. If they hear the explanation from another student, they explain it in their way. So just try to identify the students who are really successful and form your own peer group. There's free resources out there. Like in New York, there's homework help. Even in the Brooklyn Public Library, a high school tutor. You could sign up at the Brooklyn Library, virtual homework help. There's free books available at the library. And I'm glad Sean Baston is presenting because oftentimes some of these books, they don't break it down in a detailed way, right? So you may need to purchase some workbooks that break down everything in a detailed way. So I just wanted to share some of the services for Theatermatics. We have interdisciplinary modules and also an app that can be used for activities, and they're Black history centered as far as the activities. They always highlight STEAM, like math, science, technology, and also Black history. And then also we provide tutoring as well and professional development for schools. But for parents, we have multiple services, coaching, educational coaching. And the activity that I'm providing, which you'll get in an email after this is done, is an activity related to Pharaoh Hatshepsut. So I call her Pharaoh purposefully because she had the equal rights of a king. She was treated as a man, as a pharaoh. And even in some of the depictions, she was depicted as a man. So this is related to the area problem with compound figures. But the activity, it also has, if you notice some of the standards, it also has like a grade 5, 6, 7 standard as well for using ratio and proportion. And on the app, which I'll also send details in the email, there's actual videos that you can watch related to the temple. And the winter solstice is coming up on Monday, I believe it is. So the alignment for the temple is at the azimuth of like 116 degrees, 116.5. And so there's alignment. If you look at this photo, and even here, like there's some windows, like viewing windows, where when the winter solstice is happening, it's the rays are shining on certain gods and certain images inside of the inner chambers. So that's all discussed on the app. But the activity that I'm providing is actually this activity. It's related to area compound figures. So that basically concludes my presentation. I hope that was helpful. So